Hello, welcome back. In this tutorial we'll be covering everything in the Studio Magic 2 Enviro section of the drop-down menu. Each of these sections have dedicated movies for them. And this is also covered in the PDF manual that comes with Studio Magic 2. It's in Chapter 2, Enviro. Under Enviro you have 5 different sections that are accessed by clicking on the arrow here. So under Season Shifter I've got Spring, Summer, Autumn and Winter. I'm going to start with Spring, Summer. Now I've got the Layers palette open to the side. You could have that docked with the Studio Magic panel if you prefer, but I want it open here so you can see exactly what's going on. You can move the intensity slider to start off with wherever you want to, and then you're going to click Create. Now if I wanted to change the slider here, I can move it down and click on Update. I could double it by simply clicking Create again, and that's going to double the effect. You can go back many steps by clicking the Undo button, so I'll click it again. You can click Delete, which will delete the layer, or you can start over. We will be covering Move Up and Move Down shortly. Let's take a look at Autumn. I'm going to have the intensity drop it back a bit, click Create. I'm going to click Create again, and that's a little bit too strong, so I'm going to drop the intensity down for the second Autumn here, down to about 40%. Click Update. Now Studio Magic 2 makes it very easy for you to make any edits to this by painting on the layer mask. We've already got the brush selected and you're painting with black here. Now I've got it set at about 50% opacity, and what you can do is you can just paint away some of the autumn off of the trees here. Maybe not all of it, but some of it. You can just dab in there, and I'm going to take some of it off the path as well. Now of course this is entirely up to you how you want to work with this and how much of this you'd want to remove. Now as you probably know, when working with a layer mask, to remove the effect I just painted with black on there. If I wanted to add it back in, I simply switch colors here to white. You can press X on your keyboard, so if I press X it switches to black. If I press X again it goes back to white. You can switch them here as well. So if I'm painting with white and I go back on the tree, you can see it's coming back in. I'm bringing that effect back in. So let's move on to the next section, Winter. So I click on Winter and Create. Now I've got my brush pre-selected for me, so I want to take off some of this cooling effect off of her face here, so I can just paint that away. Once again I'm at 53% here, so if I come in again, get rid of most of it off of her face. Now let's add some snow. I have light selected here, click Create. I've got my brush automatically selected for me. I'm painting with black here, so I'm going to remove some of the snow from her face here. Just paint it away. Now if you paint away a little bit too much, you can press X and I can paint it back in again. So got complete creative control. I'm going to hit X again. Now you can make any changes to the sliders here of course and click on Update, but I'm going to leave them as they are. I'm going to now move on to the medium and add that as well, Create. And once again I'm going to remove a lot of that snow from her face here and then move on to the heavy. And then we'll clean this up, and the final one is the large foreground flakes. And we can see by adding all of the different snow, light, medium, heavy and the large foreground flakes, it adds realism to it. I'm going to click and remove some of those foreground flakes. And as I mentioned, you can move any of these sliders around, experiment with different settings here and just click on Update. So let's take a look at 2 before and after shots with the snow. This was shot in the studio, and here's the snow effect that we applied, and here's another one. So now let's look at Rainmaker. So I've got drizzle selected, click Create. Now I've got my brush, she's under the umbrella there, so I'm going to remove it, the rain from her face there. I'm going to click around here, what I call dabbing, where you just click in different areas. I'm at 53% here, so I'm just removing some of the rain so it takes away some of the conformity of the way the rain makes it look more natural. Dab on her clothes here a bit, and you can see the dabbing is showing up here on the layer mask. Let's add some more rain, light, and once again I'll paint it away from her face here and dab a bit on the rest of the rain. Now we'll apply the heavy. Now we can see with the heavy rain that it's darkened the image quite a bit, because with heavy thunderstorms you're going to get that darkening. We just bring the layers up here. You can see you've got a little group here that you can close and open up in the layers palette. So if this is a little bit too dark, you've got a brightness here. You can just double click on this to bring up this adjustment layer and just brighten it up a bit. So you've got complete control there. Might be a little bit too dark. I've just brought it up a bit. Close that out. I'm going to put that back. Now the move up and move down feature allows you to move any of the layers up and down in the layers palette very quickly. So I can move the drizzle up to the top if I wanted to, move it back. And the value of this becomes a lot more apparent when you get into the compositing movie. It's great to be able to quickly move the birds behind a cloud or move them in front of a cloud. Now you can hide the visibility of these layers as well. Let's say you wanted to get rid of the brightness and you wanted to get rid of the drizzle and just have the light rain and the heavy rain. I'm going to turn them back on now, and I'm going to remove some of the heavy rain from her face here, just painting on there. Let's review a couple of click-throughs with the rain. So there it is with the rain. Here's another one, the original. The lady with the umbrella and the shadow was cut out using LayerCake's cutout panel, and you can review that on LayerCake's website. And here's some heavier rain. So let's review fogged in. So I'm going to go to the drop down here, start with the ground mist, create. And the way this works is you've got a special custom brush here created for you by LayerCake. I can just click and drag, and you see the way it moves around. There's a lot of different custom settings that are applied to this brush. Every time I click it in, it moves around, the jitter changes, and that's what brings in and makes it realistic, this ground mist. Now if I want to, I could of course increase the intensity a bit, click on update. Now I'm going to get the fog detailer brush, create, and it's difficult sometimes with the recording area to see this brush, but I'm going to make it a bit smaller here. And the same thing with this one, it's custom made, so every time I click it changes direction and you get this realistic fog effect. Let's review a couple of before and after images. We can see what a huge difference it's made with this one here, and with the next one we brought in some other elements that you can bring in with the Studio Magic 2 panel. Now let's review sunset. So if we click on the presets here, you've got a number of different suns that you can choose from. I'll use the half sun, OK, create. Now I'm going to select the sun here, drag it across to the side here. Now sometimes you do have to go outside the panel and use some of Photoshop's tools. For instance, I'm going to resize the sun. That's Control or Command T to bring up the free transform tool. If you hold down Shift at the same time as you drag on one of these corner anchor points, you can resize it proportionally, so that looks fine. Double click to apply, drag it down here. And if the intensity is a bit too strong here, you could drop it back, and we drop it back between 90 and 100%, update. There's another technique you can use to change the color of the sunset. I go up to layer and flatten the image, and then we can go to Photoshop here, the adjustment layers, and if you go into the hue saturation, and then you just bump the saturation up a bit, normally around 6 to 10, somewhere in there, and just drop this hue down to around -2 or 3, somewhere in there, and get something different again. So let's review some before and afters with the sunset. Of course we brought the birds in as well with the panel there. And here's another example. And you should bear in mind that the sunset and some of the other effects do not work with every image. You've got to experiment with it. And here's another example. And that wraps it up for this tutorial. Thank you.